It is an honor and a real privilege to be here because over the years I've attended many of these morning breakfasts, and it was always a man or woman who was a scholar in certain areas. You're not getting a scholar today, but I feel honored to share with you what hopefully will be helpful in understanding the immigrants. It's been quite a difference from 50 to 54 when I would either get out of the car or get off the bus right down here at Grand Avenue, right across the street. And the first thing as you look over this way, the first thing you see was what? Kirkman Hall. Now you got to be right in front of Kirkman Hall to see it. And everything over here was nothing but football fields where the fraternities had their intramural football. And those are good memories. And certainly I've been one of those Commodore followers waiting to see them maybe win another championship in football or something. Very proud of what they did in baseball, right? But it seems, if we understand why there's so much immigration, so many immigrants coming from other countries, and knowing how they were received in the past, maybe we can learn how to maybe treat them in such a way that we can really welcome the stranger, really help them to come and find a better life. It seems that there are four major factors, all negatives, influences immigration to flee from. And first of all, from poverty. Second, a lack of freedoms. Third, persecution. And fourth, wars. Several million people left Ireland in the early 1840s, 46. The terrible potato famine. And before that, when Britain annexed Ireland, when you read about how the British treated the Irish during those years, it was so painful. It made Ireland into a totally the poorest country in Europe. And during that time, several years, 1 million Irish died of starvation. Another 1 million went to either America or Australia or New Zealand. And like many of them, they came here and elsewhere, and our treatment was such that we weren't that welcoming people that we should have been. When so many of them came from Europe later on, all over Europe, the Poles, the Italians, the Irish, the Germans, they came from all over Europe. And within a period of a number of years, some 25 million came to America. Typical in New York and Chicago, Boston, you had many signs. Italians not welcome. Catholics do not respond. The people that were most discriminated against were the Catholics, the Jews, and the blacks. Very painful atmosphere and influences that really made it difficult for those many immigrants. As you know, many of our Jewish brethren came fleeing the Holocaust. Hitler's attempt to eliminate our Jewish brethren. After the two great wars, Europe had once again great immigration. And so many of those people came to America. The typical reaction from many of us, or should I say many of the citizens of America at that time, were rather negative. You had what they call the know-nothings. You remember, that was a political group that were very critical of the immigrants. They tried to make laws, regulations that really made it very difficult for the immigrants to become a part of our country and have the opportunities for education and for jobs. It was quite bad, and especially with relating to those that were blacks, but also included were others from European countries. The KKK, Ku Klux Klan, certainly created tremendous problems. I remember when I started going to Copper Hill, that was in 1969. I had a parish in Cleveland, Tennessee, but we had a mission in Copper Hill. That was now in 69. And to hear some of those grandparents who were still living, to hear how their parents and how they were treated by the KKK with cross burnings in their yards, threats, just a terrible environment. Why? Because they were Lebanese, and many of them came there nothing more than a mule and a cart with retail clothing. They opened up a number of retail stores, clothing and so forth. Eventually, like so many other people, they were accepted eventually. They became a vital part of the community, and they made a difference. That's something that maybe we can learn. I think we're doing quite well here in Nashville. It's been such a positive attitude on the part of our businesses, our chamber, so many organizations, universities, newspapers that have really been positive. They really have. These people have really been leaders. For example, 6-8 months ago, I went down to attend a panel discussion. It was put on by the Chamber of Commerce. And I remember the president of the Commerce Chamber made it very, very clear that if you want to be a successful business person in Tennessee, you have to really believe in diversity. I heard him say that more than once. And of course, Vanderbilt some years ago, the Nashville, Tennessean, various religious leaders, and Bernie, you know, one of those great ones was a famous rabbi. What was his name? Andy. He was a member of this Divinity school for a while. I believe he's still living, right? The famous rabbi that was so prominent in the city. Leaders of justice and integration. We've been very fortunate to have such leadership. And it's amazing that I think that's why we're doing so well today. It's, well, the Europeans in the past that made up the immigration. But I think, as you know, that it's quite different today. 25% of doctors in the United States, 25% are foreign born. In our church, priesthood, it's getting close to 30% of our priests are foreign born. That's not something we can be proud of, that is Catholics, because they're not the community builders that we would like to have. Many times they're here for 3, 4, 5 years, then they go home. Many of them have a hard time speaking the English language where people can understand them. On that score, we hope that with a leadership like Pope Francis, we Catholics can soon have the opportunity to have married men and women to be ordained priests. That would be a great asset to our church, and I think to our society as a whole. I share that with you from the past, and maybe share some information relating to the present day about the change in demographics here in Nashville, some of the issues that we need to work on. Here in Nashville, about 13% of our city are people who are foreign born, with great populations from East Africa. The Middle East, we have the largest number of Kurdish people, 30,000 here in Nashville. And if you remember, that's when they had the elections in Iraq, somewhat 4 or 5 years ago. The elections took place in Nashville for a large area of Middle West, or I should say the Midwest, and all of the southern part. Nashville was the place where they came to have the elections because of that large population of Kurds. We have many from Central America. Nashville has one of the fastest growing immigrant populations in the nation. About 61,000 people currently of Latino heritage live in Nashville. And by 2040, that percentage should be about 34% of the population. I have a number of regrets in life, but one of my regrets is that I wasn't around young enough, you might say, to learn the Spanish language. And that has denied me from really being intimate with so many thousands of Latinos. I thought we were very fortunate in South Nashville, and especially at St. Everett's, that some 30 years ago, when many of the Latinos started coming into Nashville, the earliest groups met at St. Everett's in the cafeteria and meeting places. The earliest people that eventually would form the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and other groups dedicated to helping the immigrants. They first had their meeting places at St. Everett's where they were warmly welcomed. And as I say, my regret is that not being able to speak the Spanish language has been one of those things that keep you from real genuine, relationships. friendships. And that is why it's so good to know that so many high school and college students today are going to Mexico and elsewhere, staying for 4 or 5 months, learning the language to be able to come back here and really communicate and help make those Latinos even more welcome. Due to the leadership of universities and newspapers and Chamber of Commerce and many others, Nashville has a great reputation for welcoming the immigrants, that newcomers feel connected to, especially our city government. That's one reason the president came here several months ago, because we're fortunate. We are a welcoming city. And as I mentioned just earlier, I don't know but very few cities that would have the variety, the diversity, and the number of immigrants who live in Nashville. Now, when I used to walk from the Grand Avenue through this campus to go to Father Ryan, that was 5054. You didn't know I was that old, did you? But I remember so well. You were either black or white. You were either Jewish or Christian. That was it. Today, we have people in Nashville and Davidson County from 102 countries. We have every major religion of the world here in Nashville. Over at Glencliff High School, where I used to be, the students speak 27 different languages. That's a real challenge. And I think information and learning a little bit more about the real facts of education, you can come to appreciate the challenge that teachers like Glencliff, Hillsborough, and a few others who have such a great number of immigrants who speak different languages, that we have come to understand and appreciate that we can't expect those teachers to have the high scores that you would expect in the other schools in Nashville and Brentwood and Williamson County, where it's mainly predominantly white. They all speak one language. They have tremendous parental support, that we have come to, I think, a better understanding of not demanding from teachers who are in these schools, a great number of immigrants, to expect that they will do as well academically as those who have the technology, the one language, the great support. And I think that's something that helps us, that we can't demand too much from people who are burdened with some real weaknesses in our educational system. We weren't always as welcoming as we are today. One of the things that I thought was a real, in some ways, an injustice, was a program called 287G. It was a police program that it started in 2007 until 2012. Over 10,000 immigrants were placed in deportation. I was there in that early 2007 with a number of other people involved with immigration, where we were told the only ones that would be deported would be those that were criminals. That wasn't the truth. unfortunate. And I'm one that knows very much how painful that was, because, as I say, around 10,000, mostly men, were deported. And I can tell you, so many of them were from that area, Nolensville, and where I lived for many years. And you got to feel the pain of children going to school and not knowing if they ever see their father again. That was a reality. They weren't criminals. The great majority of them that were picked up were from minor traffic offenses. And as I say, that was not the truth. When they announced the program, they wanted various support from the community. They said very clearly, only criminals. How many mothers were left with 2 or 3 children without a father, without any financial support? That was here in Nashville. You're talking about pain and sorrow. I would like to be a kid that went to school and maybe said goodbye to his dad, wouldn't see him. Many times they were picked up, deported. The wife, the children didn't know where that father was for quite a while. So with the criticisms more and more from the community, the Sheriff's Department quit that program in 2012. That wasn't healthy for our community. That program really eroded public safety, as so many people of the immigrant population, they feared interacting with the police and became less likely to report crimes in their neighborhoods. If they were robbed, they had some violence done to them, they couldn't go to the police, because if they did, they could be deported, because many of them were undocumented. And I might add the fact that they don't like to use the word legal or illegal, documented or not documented would be the better language that we use in that regard. Much of the stigma from that program, even though it was discontinued in 2012, much of that stigma still remains. There was another negative effort to make it difficult for them, especially Latinos. As many of you know, 2010, there was a group trying to make it a law that everything would be in English. They call it what, the English only bill. And that was something that was a great achievement, because I think for the first time, a wide variety of our population united. The head of universities, hospitals, chambers, the average person were organized, and we were very fortunate to have that kind of leadership. They defeated that English-only bill very strongly, you might say. Coalition of business, clergy, community groups, they rallied the people to the polls. There are still a couple of things that are difficulties for the immigrants. And one of them is the implementation of President Obama's executive action to grant some 5 million people not to be deported. And as you know, some politicians are opposing that, and hopefully it will be resolved in the near future. Of those 5 million people not to be deported, 15 to 20,000 live here in Nashville. You can see how important that is. And I share these things with you because I don't think people like you and I can stand on the sidelines and not get actively involved in matters of social justice, helping these people who have so little to have the same opportunities that so many of our grandparents, because very few of us, you know, we're not natives, only the Indians, right? For the most part, we are either children of immigrants. We have relationships of people who came from elsewhere. So I would hope that we have the strength, the courage, the wisdom, and the love of each other to speak up for these things. Especially, as I said, what President Obama executive action would be such a great, great blessing for so many of those families. They won't lose their mother or father because a number of these children were born here and their parents came from elsewhere. The other thing that has been a difficulty, for many years I've always had the understanding the next thing, best thing you can do for your child is what? First thing is to love. I think the second best thing that we can do for our children is to give them the best education possible. And I remember very well over the past number of years, especially 2 women teachers, at one time or another complained about the fact it was so hard to keep the boys in school past their sophomore years. And the reason would be the fact that they would say, why should I go to school when I can't go to college? I might as well go out and get a job. That's a reality of so many, many. And as you know, if black or white, whatever we are, origin or religion, if we don't get a good education, we quit school and high school, how many of those individuals will end up in poverty, addicted to drugs, and how many, a good number, will end up incarcerated. And we pay far, far more money to incarcerate a person in 1 year in jail than we do to educate a child for 1 year. And so what I'm talking about is the tuition equality campaign that is going on today down here at the state capitol. Another opportunity for people like you and others to get involved, to make a difference. The equality campaign tuition, it means that those that are not documented can go to college and pay the same rate as others do. You send your child to maybe Tennessee State or Knoxville or Chattanooga, you pay $6,000-7,000 for tuition. If you're not documented, you pay 3 times that much. How many Hispanic parents can afford that kind of money? And when you don't educate your child, that person is going to be a burden to the state. But the sad thing is that child's intelligence, his abilities, his potential is all wasted. And so it's not enough to be citizens standing at a distance and you're not interested in what's going on around you. How many of you, and this affects, once again, many immigrants that are poor and documented. The program called Insure Tennessee, that 6 people have the power to deny medical insurance to over 300,000 of our poor in Tennessee. To me, I think that's a scandal. It's a great, great embarrassment to all of us. And even though it was defeated, it never did get out of a committee. The governor, very, very popular, worked hard at it, and the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor didn't even make any effort to get it even on the floor to debate it. Once again, we're talking about a lot of them being immigrants who are now citizens, but so many of them are our people who have been here a long time, the poor. And if you don't get medical attention, it's going to be more and more people dying young. And, as you know, more of the rural hospitals, a number of them will have to close. Once again, you tie all this together. You welcome the stranger. And the stranger doesn't have to be from the Middle East or from Europe. That stranger can be the person living down the street or in a certain part of town that more and more the poor people live. And if you and I do nothing, I think we're wasting the opportunities to make a difference. I feel very proud, grateful, and rather humble that our church has a leader like Pope Francis. It's a Judeo-Christian heritage that what God gives to you and me, we must share it with others who have so little. And Pope Francis is just advocating that. And some of us who are a little bit maybe radical or liberal or whatever you want to call it, we're really hoping that Pope Francis, he's going to speak to a joint session of Congress in September. A joint session of Congress. That Speaker of the House, Boehner, being a Catholic, and a few of those other ones, we're hoping that old Pope Francis will really, really sock it to him. So I've shared these things with you, not as a scholar, not as a great historian, but an opportunity to make a difference, to care about others who really need our help. And when you see their great suffering, when you see 6 and 7 of them in a small apartment, when those kids go to school and wonder if Dad's going to be there and all the rest. It's better now because, as I say, that program has been discontinued. But ask yourself, do you have that beautiful Judeo-Christian philosophy, way of life, that what is given to us we must share with others? Well, what do you want to ask? What is you would like to relate to or react to? I kept most of you away.
I'll make a comment.
Pardon?
I'll make a comment. I grew up in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, and I grew up in the 40s and 50s, and we had such a diverse population there in those days. A lot of the adults would go into the steel mills, and to this day, one of my favorite things to go back to there is what's called International Village. And at one point, this would take place every summer. There would be this huge meeting of many, many nationalities that were part of McKeesport, including Polish and Italian and German and Ukrainian and and Scandinavian, lots of Scandinavians, this was a wonderful melting pot. This was a wonderful education for me growing up there. I grew up a Lutheran. My best friends were Catholic. You know, we were just all together, and I can relate to many of the things that you said. Though there were divisions between the different nationalities, but you know, I came back to teach in that high school, and I could see how things were starting to fracture at that point. It's amazing. I thought growing up in the 40s and 50s we were pretty much together. By the late 60s, early 70s, there was a lot of fracturing going on, and a lot of we had a lot of serious problems, particularly in the high schools at that point. Anyway, I look at Nashville. You know, I see where Nashville is today, and I look back to this city near Pittsburgh, and I can relate to some of those issues. That's all.
Yes.
Gilbert, I want to thank you for an amazing compendium of the issues that we face today. I know you had your statement written in, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity to get a copy of that, because it's so comprehensive in terms of both history and also the present. And we really appreciate what you've done as a leader in this community, and appreciate the fact that you're able to share with us a lot of the information that you did.
How many of you know, is there anyone more dedicated to justice, to the poor? It's that beautiful Judeo spirit that people like him, he and others have made such a great difference. He and a number of the others, that rabbi, what's his name?
Randy
Paul.
Paul.
Did they also call Andy or?
Randy.
Yeah, Randy, right. One that I went to when I was younger. A man of courage and leadership. Yes. Here's a great leader. A bishop, Methodist church for many years. And another one of those who you look up to that make a difference in nationally being a progressive.
Thank you for saying that. It means a lot to me that you would say that.
It's very.
Do you notice any difference in attitudes toward immigrants in, for example, South Nashville as compared to a suburb like Brentwood? Do you notice any collective difference in the hearts of people and how they express themselves?
I do know this, that when people get to know other people well, the prejudice gathering of people, say at Redmond Lake, and you see young couples with baby carriages or whatever. So many times, a white couple, you look there, what color is that baby? Black. Brown. I was surprised a few months ago to read that the country that has the third highest adoption rate for Americans, the country that produces more adoption, the third largest, what country is that? Ethiopia. Ethiopia. I forget the first and second, it's probably South Korea and whatever. But we have grown so much, we put aside that prejudice. Why? Because we come to know each other. And knowing each other, we realize how very human and how very loving we can be. Yes.
My name is Brenda. One of the organizers at Workers Day New Year gave me out of over in South Nashville, and I just wanted to say publicly, like, St. Edward's has been an amazing source of support just for opening its doors, for allowing the space to be used for like our anniversary events and our workshops, and just to gather people in the back. And as an organization of immigrants and being an undocumented student myself, all of these things that you said are true. You know, I was priced out of education. You know, and people don't expect it to look and sound like me, right? And I just wanted to say, like, you're keep going and have such force and strength. And for the other people that are here, as we figure out how to work and how to open up these spaces, it really is just an invitation. It's just an invitation. You know, that's all it takes. Because it's spaces like this that allow people to be able to speak and feel and share these fears of deportation. You know, like, I met a woman selling tamales outside of the store because her husband was deported. You know, now she's working at McDonald's selling tamales, and she's got 3 kids to raise. And this is here on the Lone School Road, right? Which is like 3 miles from here. So these things are real, and I just want to greatly appreciate that and say that publicly. And that I agree with all of the things that you said. Tuition equality, 287G. I feel comfortable you representing my voice right here.
You know, one of the nice things some years ago, maybe 5 years ago, the son of the minister at Brandon Baptist Church, he was a very prominent minister, very outstanding, Paul Durham. church opened Easter out here, out across from Opulent. It used to be, what, Two Rivers? Huge complex. They were trying to sell it for 30-some odd million. They wanted to keep it something like a church. But anyway, they finally sold it for $12 million, which is tremendous. Their first service, they did a meeting over there in Madison, in a shopping center. They have that church now, Two Rivers, and the first service they had was 3,500. That was Easter. To make people feel warm and welcome, the church can be a great gathering place. It was for the early immigrants, and it's true today. And so many, we'd be proud that so many of the churches are welcoming and letting the Hispanic use it later in the day and afternoon, Sunday night, and so forth. So the spirit of those people who gave money in order for the Hispanics to have the church, that was a great spirit. Yes.
I just want to say really quickly, my daughter's an immigrant. She's adopted from Russia. And I grew up during the Cold War, and Russians were our enemies. We were terrified of the Russians. But after spending 3 weeks in Russia, sitting down and having meals with our hosts, and being around the Russian people, I have a great deal of love for that culture. So you're right, when you sit down and break bread with people who are supposed to be your enemies, the whole world changes.
They're going so well. They fall in love with each other. It was my niece, my nephew, they live in Birmingham, and father's name was Wallace, and the mother's name was Adele. Well, their grandmother is my sister. Well, when Jamie decided in the last year of Auburn to go to Mexico City to learn Spanish and so forth, what was the last word? Don't you marry one of those Mexicans. You come home and marry one of your own kind. I celebrated her wedding last year. She married Diego. And the two families that come together, really loving each other as families. And that is so great for young couples. So getting to know you can bring about a lot of good things. Because I'm sure they're going to have a few small Diegos. Yes.
Thank you, Father Breen. We have come to the end of our time, and we have been, as we say in my church tradition, richly blessed to have you with us this morning. Thank you all for coming, and I wish you a very, very good rest of the day and week.